It's been a while since we've got a new Steam Deck beta update, but it turns out it's because they had to figure out an issue that's been plaguing it for months now. After that, let's talk about how Helldivers 2 might finally get performance improvements on Steam Deck, and finally, a big Unreal Engine 5 game works well on the deck. I don't know how this is happening, but I'm glad because it's one of my favorite games I've played all year. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. I was gonna ask what you're playing, but who am I kidding? I know everyone watching this channel is probably playing Hollow Knight Silksong because I added a bunch of you on Steam, and I was checking last night when I was playing Hunt with my friend Ben. Everyone on my friends list is playing Hollow Knight Silksong. I booted up the first one. I started it on Switch. I got around halfway through. For some reason or another, I fell off. I have that brain thing where I can't start the new game until I finish the first one, and then when I finish the first one, I need a break. So I will play Silksong eventually. It's just like I got to get through the first one first, and I don't want to rob myself of that experience and like rush. So I'm going to take my time, but it is downloaded on my deck. If you're not playing Silksong, let me know what you're playing in the comments. If you are, let me know if you like it, I guess. Like, I'm sure you do because you're playing it religiously for like the entire opening weekend. But yeah, let's get into the first news story here because we got a pretty big Steam Deck beta. I'm going to cut right to the chase on the feature that I think is most important. I don't know why this issue is so hard to solve, but earlier this year, some random Steam Deck update completely broke Wi-Fi for a lot of people on the Steam Deck OLED, and I am a psychopath who has multiple Steam Decks. I have a Steam Deck OLED refurbished model, and I have a Steam Deck OLED limited edition model. I've actually gone through two of them this year because I had to RMA my original limited edition model because it had stress fractures around the screws on the case. So I got three Steam Decks this year, and all of them have experienced this issue where when you put it in sleep mode, if you take it out after like 5 or 10 minutes of sleep mode, you'll still be connected to Wi-Fi. But if you put it in sleep mode and leave it for a couple of hours or even a day and come back to it, it's like it goes into some deep sleep hibernation mode and Wi-Fi is just like forgotten. So you have to go into the settings, and it's a total crapshoot on whether or not it'll actually like kick in the Wi-Fi and see your SSIDs. So like usually you just have to restart the Steam Deck, and that sucks because one of the best features of the Steam Deck compared to a traditional gaming PC is that you can put it to sleep when you're playing a game. So like having to restart it makes it more like a traditional PC, and that sucks. And also, it just shouldn't do that, right? Like it didn't do that for 3 years up until the beginning of this year, and they've done multiple beta updates that say they fixed this issue, and it does for a couple of days, but then a random update comes out a little bit later, breaks it again, and then we got to wait for a beta. I installed it on both of my Steam Deck OLEDs. Both of them connect to the internet when I boot them back up. So like hopefully when this comes to the stable mode, it's not one of those fixes once again that works for a few days and breaks. But so far on my limited testing, it looks like it's finally fixed, which is good because this issue has been going on way too long. Another issue you guys have told me about in the comments on Steam, and I've seen it on Reddit, is that the battery charge estimation got thrown completely out of whack when they introduced the feature of limiting your battery to 80%. It ignores that a lot of the time. Like it'll charge past 80%, it'll charge to like 75%. It uses it as more of a suggestion of where it should cap off battery charging to protect your battery health. I don't know if it being not really consistent really hurts it in the long run, but I don't feel like it's the hardest issue to figure out. And then also, once you enable it, it seems like the battery percentage is a little weird. Like it'll stop at certain numbers and then it'll keep draining, obviously, as you're playing, and then it'll jump down to where it's at after a few minutes. This beta apparently fixes both of those issues. So if you're using the battery cap, like if you want it to charge to 80% and just stop there, that should actually work now. And if you were seeing the weird battery percentage issues when you have it turned on, that should be fixed as well. I don't use the battery cap feature. I just kind of YOLO it, and I figure if the battery does expand, I should be able to replace it because it's easily accessible. So like I'm just going with God on this one. But I have noticed the battery percentage issue where it's not completely accurate. Like I was playing Dying Light, I booted up my Steam Deck, it said it was at 60%, then like 5 minutes later I get the warning that it's at 10%. Obviously it wasn't at 60%, so I'm glad to see that fixed in this beta. They also fixed an issue which would be really weird to have happen to you, where if you're using the 3.5mm jack to use headphones, when you pull it out the volume would jump to 100%. That would be so terrible if I was playing in bed with headphones and then I took them out when I put it to sleep, and then you hear loud ass audio that like wakes my wife up. So I'm glad I never experienced it, but if you did, you're going to be happy to know that it's fixed. You're not going to have to deal with blaring speakers when you unplug your headphones. And if you're using the Legion Go S, the ROG Ally, the Ally X, you've probably noticed an issue where when you put it to sleep and then wake it up, the buttons buttons will be inactive, like randomly. Sometimes the face buttons don't work. Sometimes the joysticks don't work. Sometimes the back buttons don't work. They're constantly releasing beta updates to fix these random issues. And then just like with the first issue I talked about earlier in the segment, it seems like they come back. So hopefully this is the last time they have to fix these issues with buttons dropping out, because anything where you have to restart the deck, the Legion Go, the ROG Ally, is just like a little bit of a bridge too far for me in terms of like feeling jank. Like, this is a premium product. All of these are premium products, especially the ROG Ally and Legion Go with how much they cost. Dealing with things like the buttons dropping out should not even be something we have to talk about. So I'm glad they're putting effort into fixing it. I'm just like losing my patience a little bit in terms of how much these issues keep popping up over this span of this year. Like, it seems like they might be a little overwhelmed with the overall SteamOS updates. I'm fine if they take a step back, slow down, make sure they iron out all these bugs, but it has been a minute since we got a beta update, so maybe that's exactly what they did. Let me know if you have any other issues you're dealing with down in the comments below, because I'm pretty sure people at Valve watch these videos. It's just happened too many times where I see a lot of people talking about one issue, and then there's very quickly an update that directly addresses it. So it does help. After that, let's talk about Helldivers 2. So I played this game when it came out very extensively. I put in over 100 hours with my friends. Then I took a little bit of a break just because I got deeply invested into Hunt Showdown. I put so many more hours into that game. I'm still obsessed with it, but my little brother, who I played Elden Ring with all summer and Elden Ring Night Rain with all summer, I gave him my original Legion Go with SteamOS on it. He's been having a great time, and all of his buddies got into Helldivers 2, so he got me back into it, and I was blown away when I went to re-download it that this game is over 100 gigabytes large. And this kind of became a little bit of a controversy because people did some investigating to figure out why it's grown so big. And it turns out they just duplicate textures a lot. So like if like 5 levels use one texture, instead of the game being able to read the texture from one folder, they'll just copy the texture into that other level's folder, and then they're duplicating it. So like in reality, this game should be like 30 gigabytes and now it's over 100. So it's not because of the war bonds or anything, it's just because the file structure has gotten out of control. And I feel like that really comes down to the fact that they're using a dead engine for this game. It's built on like Autodesk or something. It's an unsupported engine because this game took so long to make. So they've been like operating on this engine, trying to keep it up to snuff themselves. And I'm sure that's just a limitation of it, that you can't tell it to grab textures from one folder and you have to put them in every level. But they are saying that they're working on reducing the file size and optimizing performance. And of course, anytime you talk about optimizing performance, people love to come up and ask about the Steam Deck, and then you usually don't get a response. But someone from Arrowhead did respond, and they said, well, on the one hand, by optimizing the game and actually making it perform well at our performance targets, which is a bigger problem where, you know, if you go on the Steam page and you see the recommended specs, the game doesn't perform well at the recommended specs. When it came out on my 4090 PC, I was playing it at native high settings, 1440p. I never saw a blip in the frame rate. And then when I was playing last week with my brother, I mean, he was dropping to 45, 50 FPS all the time. And lowering the settings to as low as they would go didn't help. So it seems like something with the engine or whatever. So like, yeah, they've got to work on that for sure, because that's just unacceptable. Because if it's happening on my 4090 PC, I can't imagine how bad it is on the PS5 and PS5 Pro, where like you're dealing with mid to low end hardware compared to a big beefy gaming PC. So it's good that they're working on optimizing the game. But they also took it one step further. They said, look, we understand people like playing this game on the Steam Deck. So once we get the size optimizations and game optimizations out of the way, then we'll start directly addressing the Steam Deck performance issues. So it's not a fix that's going to happen overnight, because again, their engine is dead. So they have to figure out how to do all this stuff while they're releasing content updates. So I think it's going to take a while to do that, but it is on their radar. And this game seems to be a little bit perennial in the sense that it can't really die. Like, it keeps coming back because at the core of the experience of Helldivers 2, it just is extremely fun. So I think they'll figure it out. We just got to give them time. And it's nice to see them acknowledge the Steam Deck. I don't know what the solution is. Like, of course, if they change engines, they'll switch it to Unreal Engine 5 and then we'll have even more problems. It just seems like this game was way bigger than they anticipated, and you can't really hire your way out of problems like that. So I'm willing to give them some grace, and I'm excited to see that they're going to focus on the Steam Deck, because I played the first game on Vita relentlessly, and it was like one of the most fun online gaming experiences I've ever had. And if it just ran at a locked 30 FPS with decent graphics, I'd be really happy. So I hope this this all works out. But in the meantime, I've got a new game recommendation for you. I know you're all playing Hollow Knight Silksong, but please don't let Cronos the New Dawn fly under your radar. It gets a little bit of a bump for me. I'm just going to be real, because it's an Unreal Engine 5 game that looks and runs phenomenally. Not only on my main gaming PC, I can play it natively 1440p high settings with hardware enabled ray tracing, which is excellent, but even on the Steam Deck, it runs really well. You have to set it to very low settings, but with a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games, one big benefit of this engine is that the low settings are usually what the consoles are using, and they look really good, and that is the case here because they had to optimize it for Switch 2, which in turn helped us in the long run because the game looks and runs really well on the Steam Deck. One thing you do have to keep in mind with this game is that there is a native Linux version, but it doesn't really run very well. I accidentally downloaded it on my SteamOS PC upstairs, and I was like, people are saying this game ran well. What's going on? It turns out you have to force Proton to make it use the Windows version and then use Proton. I don't know why, but it just looks and runs a lot better than the native Linux build. So that's the first thing you should do if you pick this game up. And once you're in the game, set it to the lowest preset, lock your Steam Deck at 30 FPS, use the in-game frame limit to be 60, and you'll be good to go. I think you can mostly run it at 40, but I just want a constant frame rate, so I'm doing 30. If you can deal with a few dips into the high 30s with 40 FPS lock, you should be just fine. And this game is excellent. I kind of went media blackout on it because I knew I was going to eventually pick it up. It really does feel like if you took the best parts of Resident Evil 2 Remake and the best parts of Silent Hill 2 Remake and the best parts of Dead Space and just mashed them all together, but then came out with something that does feel unique and original, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to say it, but like, despite the fact that it is inspired by some of the greatest survival horror games ever, it still manages to feel like its own thing, mainly because of its world. It takes place in one location split between two different time periods. There's a big virus that killed everyone in the future. You're a traveler, you go back in time to before the virus starts. It's like an investigation, figure out what happened. The story is really cool and interesting, and it does stay firmly planted in easy to figure out land. Like, it's not esoteric and like trying to make you think about big concepts. Like, it gets you started down that path, but it is a narrative you can follow, which is a big plus for me. The combat is where it really feels like a mix of Dead Space and Resident Evil 2 Remake. Like, you're not blowing the limbs off of enemies, but you are using heavy hitting guns, and you have the melee swing and the stomp, so that's like straight out of Dead Space. But there's tension because your gun has two options. You can semi-auto fire it, which is weak damage, or you can charge it up, and that's full damage, and it doesn't use more ammo to charge it up. So realistically, you should always be charging up your ammo, but that takes time, so the enemies can close the gap. That creates tension. It takes like 3 hits to kill a normal enemy. It takes 3 hits from them to kill you. So the combat is very tense. Every time there was combat, I was like kind of like sitting forward and sweating a little bit because I knew I had to be on my A game. And there is an incentive to defeat them quickly because they can meld with each other. So if you kill one immediately and then chase another one around, and then the third one you don't have your eye on, they'll run over to the dead one and then suck it up and get armor and stronger damage. So you can kind of counter that by using a flamethrower on your wrist where you can burn their bodies, sort of like the original Resident Evil remake, but you never have a lot of fuel. So you got to be smart and use the environment because there's of course fire barrels everywhere. It's just a really interesting combat system that's fun and engaging throughout the whole thing so far, shockingly. I don't know how Bloober Team managed to pull this off just a year after Silent Hill 2. Maybe they were working on this more because it was their own original IP. I really hope this game does well. I'd like to see it become a franchise. There's always room for me with third-person survival horror games, and no matter how many make, there just aren't enough of them. This year is stacked between this, Silent Hill F, and of course Dying Light the Beast, which isn't third person, but it's still a horror game. So I hope that even though all of these are coming out within like a month of each other, people are able to find room to play them. I know I definitely will, but you should definitely check this game out. It's only $60 and only 20 gigabytes, so it's not going to take up a ton of room on your Steam Deck, and even though it's Unreal Engine 5, it runs really well. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you in this video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.